This is Fearless Careerist with Dr. Catherine Robert. On this episode, Catherine speaks with Susan Gold, founder of the Global Game Jam, about her work in building video game education and how she continues to bring people together through her work.
The Global Game Jam was about bringing students, hobbyists, and professionals together in the same room.
Mm-hmm.
And this idea of creating this almost tangible creative excitement, this collaboration amongst all these people, that was what I was looking for. That was what my purpose was how do I bring together these people towards creative effort, but also open up new doors of thinking and opportunities for them.
Here's Catherine Robert.
Today's Fearless Careerist brings people together and facilitates magical connections. It's not an overstatement to say that Susan Gold's work has impacted people around the world since she is the founder of the Global Game Jam, an annual event in which 40,000 game developers gather for one weekend a year in one of multiple sites, either in person or on Discord, to create games, some of which go on to commercial development. Susan joins us here today to share her path from travel agent to pioneering entertainment technology programs as a college professor and administrator to her work in the early gaming industry. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you very much, Catherine.
You didn't have a straight path from high school to a college degree to a job. What did your journey to a bachelor's degree look like?
I dropped out of college. I grew up in Chicago. And I was very fortunate to come from a family that supported education. And I always thought I'd go to college, but at the time when I first went off, it wasn't right for me. I wasn't in that space where I didn't even know what I wanted, right? When you're there and like you keep trying on different majors and none of them seem to work for you, you're like, I don't know what I want to do. And so dropping out of school, it seemed like the right thing to do. But of course, it didn't come off as that. It came off as escaping the reality of the real world. I just didn't know who I was.
Right. So you dropped out, and what did you do then?
I had a good time.
That was very quiet. I had a good time. Okay.
A really good time. I moved to Hawaii. I traveled. I experienced life because I grew up a little bit sheltered.
Yeah. And then you came back home.
Oh, yeah.
What did you do then? What kind of work did you do when you came home from Hawaii?
So my father is one of those people that, and my mother, I should say, you have to have a plan. Like, you always have to have a plan. Before they would let me come home, it was, what's your plan? And I didn't know. All I thought was, I just want to travel. I want to see the world. So I said, I think I'll be a travel agent. Don't know where they came from other than this idea, especially at that time in the 80s, being a travel agent meant free travel, meant discounts, it meant free hotel rooms. I mean, it was just like Christmas. Every time I walked into the office and be like, do you want to go to England? Oh, okay.
I'm jealous. That's awesome. Okay. Eventually you decided to go to school. What caused that?
Between travel and life, I got involved in politics. And I was working on the 92 campaign. President Clinton became president. I had a chance to go to Washington. I'm like, I don't have a degree. I don't want to be somebody's secretary. I don't want to do that. That's not my life. That isn't who I am.
Yeah.
I had been taking classes like at the in Chicago, the museums often have adult learning classes.
Right.
That they're also sometimes for credit. I had some credits from my early days at the University of Iowa. Occasionally, I would take a class. I loved learning. I just didn't know what I wanted to learn about.
Right.
When I left in 92 to go to school, after realizing like I could go to Washington after the election, I was like, what are you going to do? And I thought, I'm going to be a marine biologist.
Marine biologist. Okay. So
Yeah.
you went down to Florida.
Down to Florida I went, and then I found out I wasn't a marine biologist. I will admit that I have a few deficits, and one of them is math problem solving. That being my Achilles heel, I realized that a science future was probably not in mine, and I had to reevaluate. That really was crushing. But at the same time, while I was in school, I was taking a photography class. I was beginning to find myself. Here I am. I'm older than everybody else, but I still didn't know who I was. I was taking classes like everybody else, like any undergrad. And then there I was in this dark room, and light and imagery all made sense to me.
It's exciting.
What I found was who I was, but there was nothing that was going to keep me afloat as an artist.
Right.
And I didn't know what to do.
You changed majors from marine biology to photography.
No, actually,
No.
communications.
Oh, okay.
Because what I really felt my photography was doing was telling a story. And I realized I was very observant in politics of how people, I don't want to say manipulated, but how people used words and communicated concepts. I might know something about.
What motivated you to go straight into a graduate program after finishing your bachelor's in communications?
I knew that I couldn't just go where I wanted to go with what was an undergraduate degree.
Okay.
I really felt that having found my voice, I wasn't able to think, how would this manifest into a livelihood? My whole upbringing was, how are you going to take care of yourself? When I was standing in a bar and someone said to me, what do you do? And I said, I'm an artist. I thought I was kidding. I was like, did I just say that out loud? Am I really an artist? Who am I? That's all I could think was, I just said I was an artist.
What did you go to the graduate program for?
I went to the Visual Studies Workshop in Rochester, New York. The founder, Nathan Lyons, and his wife, Joan Lyons. The program was relatively small, and they taught you everything in photography. They taught you old school, they taught you new school. And at one point, I was doing printing with a printing press. I was doing photo etchings. I was really having a good time, but I saw in the corner people on computers. And I'm like, what are they doing? They said, oh, they're doing digital art. Okay. I started thinking about it. That's the future. I better go learn that. And I walked into that room and I'm like, teach me. I took a class. I taught myself. From there, when you're looking for work as a professor or teaching, you had to carry around your portfolio of all of your work. And there I was with a disc, and all these people with all these heavy things they're schlepping around. And there I was. I'm like, nope. I got it on a disc.
What made you decide to look for teaching jobs? After, what about?
I thought I would work in a museum. I truly thought that was my plan. I got an internship at the Eastman House in Rochester. I made their first website, and I was trying to figure out, where am I in this scheme of, things? And I helped, the curator create, a show that was interesting. I was bored to death.
Yeah.
It was just not me.
Right.
The level of quiet in a museum, in the offices, is deafening. I mean, please, somebody talk.
You're like that kid that's always talking in class, right?
Maybe.
All right. So you got a job at Sierra Nevada College.
Yeah. So I graduated Visual Studies Workshop, and my first interview was for this college. And digital art was kind of new. I referred to myself as a digital artist. I got a job teaching at Sierra Nevada College. I remember the chair of the department telling me years later, but I said, why did you hire me? She's like, because you told me to. I said, what? She's like, you said you want to hire me. I'm like, you're right. Well, okay, I'll start saying that more often.
But after starting, you were asked to create a degree program to help facilitate teaching digital art, right?
So I am one of those super organized people. I
Mhm.
love to kind of think about systems. I like to think how one thing helps build another thing. I am really engaged in that process of how do we learn? And I was asked to create something I knew nothing about. I didn't know how to go about that other than ask questions. If you give me a project, I'm going to ask a million questions. I asked a lot of questions. I called industry, I called other professors, and figured it out.
Yeah, it's one thing to write curriculum for a program, that has been around, right? But it's
Oh, this is
it's entirely
all
different
new.
thing. Yeah.
Video games. So, first of all, they called it entertainment technology at Carnegie Mellon. I'm like, "What does that mean?"
Yeah.
I didn't know. I'm gonna need, like, a little bit of more information. I was very fortunate. At Carnegie Mellon, I was mentored by Randy Pausch, and he did the last lecture. I don't know
Mhm.
if you remember him.
Yeah.
But he was my mentor, and he really helped me. He would put together book lists for me to read. He would tell me games to play. He would introduce me to people I would have never connected with on my own. He became a very important part of my development.
Wow. Yeah, his impact, it's been decades and decades of his, and it will continue on.
I was really fortunate and that I got to work with him, and I also had an opportunity his book, The Last Lecture, when it came out, I got a copy, and I'm like, "I need it signed," but he was so sick by that time. I sent it to him, and I'm like, "Would you please sign this for me?" It did come back, but it came back on my birthday, so it
Oh,
was perfect.
so sweet. You built this program, and then your department transferred the program to the computer science department.
Yeah, so I came from art
Yeah.
and only thought of myself as an artist, but because it involved technology, I got moved. I was heartbroken because I never thought of myself as an engineer. When I really found out who I was an artist, right? Like, why all of a sudden are you taking away my moniker? Now I'm a technologist? It wasn't the
Yeah.
same.
Yeah, not as glamorous, right?
That was what I was always looking for.
It sounds like colleges didn't know where to put gaming technology programs.
It's true. I've had friends that their game program was in the journalism school. I've had friends who, it came out of the computer science only department, and it's okay. It's an evolving genre. It needs to be studied, but
Mhm.
does it fall into one silo? No, it isn't. It's a hybrid
You left the school and then went to Garage Games as their academic coordinator. How did you get that job?
network. Everything in my life is
Mhm.
typically about who I had an opportunity to meet. To be honest, creating one of these early programs, there weren't a lot of people creating tools for academia, and Garage Games was one of those places. And that was something that was so desperately needed on
Mhm.
the educational forefront, someone to create a program around it. It was definitely a learning curve because I hadn't worked in industry before. I was a fish out of water for sure.
Yeah, 'cause you
Acronyms, didn't know any. Had to look them up.
right.
ROI. I had no idea what it meant. None whatsoever. As an ar
So this is before you could just quickly look something up on Google.
oh god. I mean, I had no idea what I was doing. What I did know was what students needed. That was something that was started to become inbred in me.
Mhm.
I realized all these missing pieces, and I was always looking for ways to fill them to make it easier for students.
Yeah. Yeah, it was such an interesting discipline since, we were moving from all paper, all hard copy textbooks and into material that was largely electronic and producing electronic outputs. So it's very different than our previous tactile world.
And as an educator, if you're teaching art history, it doesn't change, right?
Right.
But in technology-based anything, there's always an upgrade. There's always a new operating system.
hmm
There's always a barrier to entry.
Oh, yeah. And, universities move so slowly that had to be frustrating. Like all of the software in my computer labs was always outdated.
I had one of my biggest fights in my life over the fact that I needed a Mac lab.
At Sierra Nevada.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought they were going to kill me. They're like, how much? For what? You want people to do animation. We need a computer a little more, with a little more juice than your typical computer that a kid has.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, let's make it a PC. And I'm like, no,
And that's where the whole commercial, I'm a Mac, not a PC came from.
because it was like, no, I mean, sorry, but these are the tools we need and
Yeah.
that I need to be teaching because these are the tools they're going to have to use when they graduate. And I can't like give them something that's 15 years old. That's
Yeah.
not going to fly. They're not going to be able to work.
When you're working at garage games, this is the early 2000s, still the early days of gaming companies. What did the job look like?
My responsibility was to get other educators to use their tools.
Mhm.
And if you want to understand, they were an engine. An engine is what drives the game, right? And you put all these pieces together and it is coordinated, and you have to be able to code and you have to be able to understand how the tool works. Well, most places didn't want to share that information. That was highly regarded secrets. Well, how do you expect me to teach people with highly regarded secrets?
Oh,
So
yeah.
it was coming to a point where I don't want to sound like I'm always arguing with people, but I'm always fighting to try to make people see and understand. Now, I understand intellectual property, copyright, and using software, let's say, illegally. However, if my students can figure out how at that time, and we're talking like the early aughts, how to download a massive piece of software,
Mhm.
figure out how to stitch it together, and then figure out how to crack it. That's a good, I don't know, month project
Mhm.
just to get a software to play with, right? And
Mhm.
then they were teaching themselves. And I always thought that this was an amazing MIT. People wanted to throttle me because I was encouraging this kind of behavior. Now,
Mhm.
yes, it was illegal, but at the same time, my students weren't making any money off of it. They
Right.
were just learning, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, now the model has changed. When you use these tools, now they're all free.
Right.
However, when you make money on it is when you pay. Makes so much more sense.
Oh,
And it
okay.
allows you to be able to teach these things. That's what I was trying to bring that about for education in general.
Right.
Like, make these tools free and find out how to monetize once they're making money. But to
Right.
ask someone, I don't know if you've ever looked at the price of some of these licenses, $1,000. Kid couldn't afford that.
Right. Right.
That would be crazy.
And this is largely men at this point, at least working in the companies?
Yes.
I mean, I know the answer to that, right? It's all men. So I'm setting the stage for someone who doesn't see that today, but
Uh,
that it's all men, it's coders. Like you're working as an academic coordinator in a room full of men who are coding 24 hours a day.
coding, making art, doesn't matter. And they weren't really, there were 2 bathrooms at Garage Games,
Mhm.
and those 2 toilets would be occupied all the time, and
Gross.
men would go in there with reading material, and I had to go across the street to the jail to use their bathroom. I would have to tell them on occasion that they had to change clothes because they stunk. I honestly had a guy get up, pull off his T-shirt, turn it inside out and go there. What are you doing? And I'm like, this is so.
So you're speaking a different language. You're a different gender. After 7 tense months, you got fired. What
No,
happened?
I yelled at the president. Okay. They wanted me to teach him how to do public speaking. And I'm like, you can't mumble. And he would mumble. And he would try to do things. And I would be like, that's not how you present. I think he did something. And I'm like, that is not how we do it. He was like, you can't talk to me like that. And I was like, I can't. I was so like, what do you mean? I assumed that you could have me here to teach you. You would want me to correct you.
Yeah.
No, that is not how you treat the president of the company. So yeah, I had a little something to learn. But at the same time, when I was let go, I had never been fired like that before.
Uh-huh.
But it was a good lesson,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Was I right? Of course I was right. But the thing is,
Was it a relief to leave?
little, because I was out of my element. I really am an academic.
Yeah.
It seemed really crazy, but hey, I got to live in Oregon. I got to live on a farm. I had a lot of experiences I would have never had.
Yeah.
And
That's
then,
fun.
as my jobs always evolved, even if things fell apart, I just kind of got used to that. That is one thing that I do a lecture, usually when I was teaching, called You've Been Fired. Learn these words. They are something that are going to happen to you. Not because you're a bad person,
Uh-huh.
but because, I don't know, someone on the other team doesn't like you. My industry of video games is terrible, especially even
Mhm.
right now. Layoffs are in the not a 10 or 15 people, they're in 1,600,
Right.
people gone in a day.
So it's not the end of the world. It's just part of the story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that is one of the things that I learned the best was people are going to let you go for different reasons, and you just have to take that all in. One of my best friends let me go. I asked to have a meeting with him, and they were very frank about why I was let go.
Mhm. Yeah,
It was
it
money.
helps to hear.
But you have to ask,
Yeah.
you know? Don't pretend that, "Oh, I'm one of 1,600 people." Walk in that office and say, "Okay, you let go 1,599. Why me?"
Yeah. Yeah, because 'cause you'll learn from it, right?
Exactly.
You've always organized groups of people into action, and especially during this time, whether you were organizing for political organizations or connected to your job, by now you're building a large special interest group for games and education. This led to a lot of unpaid work in game program review. What were the benefits of that work?
Well, just constantly increasing my network. I was allowed to go places and meet people
Mhm.
and do things that most educators couldn't do. After working at a studio, I was able to understand the differences between what we're trying to teach and what they actually needed. I got to learn about how things move at a different pace
Mhm.
and realize that students truly are not getting an idea of what it's really like to work in this industry
Mhm.
without having worked in it. Now I can tell you the truth. What's
Right.
it like
Yeah.
to show up for work, stay there for 12 hours,
Go home and change
deal,
your clothes.
sleep? I'll be honest. I'll be honest. No one tells you how hard you have to work in the beginning.
Mhm.
And I think that is one of the things that is hardest for me to explain to my students,
Mhm.
the amount of work that it takes to succeed and what it means when you say, I'm working. Like,
Mhm.
I'll be honest, I really felt like the school world doesn't really teach you what it's like to really work.
Yeah.
And that's a good and a bad thing.
The game program review led to a lot of international consulting and ultimately to the founding of Global Game Jam in 2008.
Yeah. So the special interest group, I was sharing curricula. I had worked with a huge group of people to come up with what I would call basic foundation for what a games degree should be. And then I was traveling a lot, sharing that, trying to get people to adopt it, which is really, really not the easiest thing to do, especially in other cultures with other educational systems that I was completely oblivious about. I had to learn a whole bunch of stuff about how global curriculum was developed.
Mhm.
And what I found missing was why I created the Global Game Jam.
Oh.
What I couldn't come up with in the way of do it in the class, I did it in the Global Game Jam. Yeah. It was really figuring out this is what's missing in
Yeah.
education, this understanding of how do we do it? What's it really like?
So, what was involved with starting such a large project? I mean, this is a big undertaking.
I do not know how to do things small. So that could be one thing. Organizing, I got my start in Chicago politics. And what I learned there were the pieces of what I would then put into the Global Game Jam, like how to organize, how to expand, how to reach out to people. All of those things all came from me learning how to knock on doors and talk to my neighbors.
Right. Not everybody is confident enough to go talk to a stranger about a new project.
Well, very often I would have to talk to a stranger, but I'd also have to ask them for money, you know? So talk about uncomfortable moments.
Yeah.
You're like, but what was so wonderful, I started the Global Game Jam on a $500 grant.
Okay.
And that grant opened up just the minimum of things, like a
Mhm.
website or some sort of access to a tool like Skype. I had to
Mhm.
Skype everywhere. You know, imagine I eventually, before I left, was in 115 countries.
Yeah.
I would have to have conversations with people in foreign countries and try to explain to them the importance and value, and then tried to convince them that they needed to participate. That was quite an ordeal in many ways.
The grant applications and organizing events, it was that a full-time job?
And teaching, but yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted this. I don't know why, but I really felt the whole idea about the Global Game Jam isn't just we all get together and we make a game, right?
Right.
It's about creating communities in places there were none.
Right.
And creating opportunities for people who did not know each other. First and foremost was about creating community around games. The second thing was this democratization of software,
Right.
allowing people to use tools without having to pay for it is going to change an entire ecosystem. You
Yeah.
know, and when I found at least my school, when I would say, this software costs this much, and, you know, it was impossible. The kids always needed an upgrade and then having to pay for the upgrades. When I created the jam, it allowed us to distribute tools and
Mhm.
allow people to use them freely
Mhm.
and learn those things. So it was really an opportunity, at least for me, to fulfill purpose, which
Yeah.
was another part of who I am, is that I always feel like I'm driving towards a purpose. There has to be a purpose. And the purpose was students never got to make a game from beginning to end.
Yeah.
They never got access to these tools. They didn't get an opportunity to talk to anyone outside of their class. And what the Game Jam did was brought in strangers into their known place. Also introduce them. I would tell people, don't come with your friends. Yes, your friends can be there, but don't be on your friend's team. You can always work with those people. Work
Right.
with the people you're never going to have a chance to work with again. You don't know who they are. The Global Game Jam was about bringing students, hobbyists, and professionals together in the same room.
Mhm.
And this idea of creating this almost tangible creative excitement, this collaboration amongst all these people. That was what I was looking for. That was what my purpose was how do I bring together these people towards creative effort, but also open up new doors of thinking and opportunities for them.
After all of these many years of teaching and game design and engaging in the consulting and in curriculum development, how have you seen the collective understanding of gaming education evolve?
See, there are two schools of thought. There's more the apprentice approach, where you go to school to become a coder.
Right.
Those are not always the same thing as someone who wants to become a creative and a lifelong learner. There's two different approaches, both inform and ultimately create a whole new approach to how we teach, but it wasn't there yet, right? This idea of having artists and computer scientists in the same class was new and novel. Why would you ever put them all together? That's how the world of games actually works. So why not do that? Give them these opportunities to learn what it's like to work with an artist and what it's like to work with someone who's producer, who is managing and being equitable with time and responsibility. And they get to try on all these different hats in a game jam. That's what I wanted them to experience. Like when I got to work in a museum and realizing this isn't what I want to be when I grow up.
Yeah.
This isn't who I am. I can't live in silence. Whereas in games, it's very messy. It's very difficult. And when I say difficult, there's the, okay, we have this idea and a concept and we're testing out a mechanic and we have a good storyline. And yet when someone goes to play it, it breaks. How do I get over that, right? And so I wanted to put my students in situations where they had to learn on the fly. They had to wear different glasses so they could see the world through a different perspective.
Yeah.
And they also had to see how hard it is to iterate on the fly, how hard it is to work with strangers that have different perspectives.
Yeah.
That's really hard to do.
So in our gaming education, we started pretty siloed with not adequate software, and now we have much better tools, more democratized, and more access to people of multiple skill levels or skill
Right,
types.
because so when I started the Global Game Jam, we used IRC, which was just, texting, because not everybody had Skype or cameras. That was just novel and new.
Right.
So here we are in a world where now on Discord, I can have a conversation, work with you on a project, also be on Slack with another group, work on another project. I could be doing all these things in tandem. That wasn't possible before.
Yeah. All right, I have a hard question for you.
Okay.
Working in a still young and developing industry is so risky and thus takes these big chances. You've had a couple of big swings that didn't work out, like a game studio startup that was going to cost too much money, and you worked for several months for a company that failed and never paid you. Is
Oh.
the risk worth it to work in the gaming industry?
Depends. It depends on your lifestyle. If you're someone who needs to be at work at 9 and leave at 5, no, this is not your space. This is never going to work. You're never going to be able to survive because you won't be able to leave at 5 o'clock. That doesn't happen.
Right.
We don't start work till 10 a.m.
Yeah.
We have core hours. We have to work certain hours, usually from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Yeah.
But then you just have to get your work done. If it takes you 12 hours, 12 hours it is. If it takes you 18 hours, 18 hours it is. It's not like you can go, you have to remember, because the next day someone has to use what you created so
Wow.
they can do their job.
No pressure.
It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of failures, so many. I worked for a really good friend, like I mentioned, a lot of things started to change in the industry because I was not essential. He came to me and he let me go. And other people go, and other people go, and other people go. When I was working with them, they were a Studio 300. Now they're a Studio 30.
Wow. So it changes quickly. Your newest project is the Global Game Jam podcast and the accompanying Substack. Tell me more about that.
Well, I retired. I retired in so much as I didn't want to teach anymore, and jobs weren't really paying.
Right.
And reality set in. I still have things to share. I still know things that can help people. What can I do to do that? One of the things I can bank on is that I know a lot of people in this industry. I fortunately created a good persona. I'm a well-intended person, and people know that when I am trying to do something, it's not about me. Rarely I'm thinking, what am I going to do to make myself famous? I don't think about that. I think about, what am I going to do? What am I going to leave? What's my legacy? How am I going to help people? And it's those types of things that get me excited. And because I know so many people, I thought, wow, you've all had such interesting lives. Why don't we start to share that? One of the things that always would come back to me from young people was, how did you do that? Why did you do that? Because nobody else was, usually is the answer. And the how'd I just did it. I didn't think about it. I didn't think of all the things it couldn't be and all the risk. I decided if I wanted to try something, like I said, I don't do things small. I'm going to do it. I'm just going to go all out and do it. And I fortunately have the capacity to pull it off. I'm very fortunate that I have friends that'll help me. I'm very fortunate that I reached out to 20 people for my first season and they said yes.
Yeah.
Rarely did someone say no. And that's okay if they say no. I'm giving people an opportunity to share their oral history, but at the same time, teach us something.
Right.
Why did you make that choice? How did that choice totally affect you and the people around you and your studio? I was just writing an essay. So the Substack is like my reflections from my interviews and trying to expand on those ideas of how can I take what I learned from this conversation and use it still to mentor you? And I want very much to take those pearls and talk about them a little further, just more. Let's think about what we heard and not just let it go.
Yeah.
And that's really where the essays are. I'm about to sit down and write one. For most everybody from every place in the world, I've had some sort of connection. I had my first interview where I was like, I don't know how I could connect to this. The person was such a life so far afield from my understanding of how you grew up and how you developed. How he did was beyond my comprehension. I thought, wow, this is where I want to introduce people to. The idea that you could overcome so much
Yeah.
and still thrive.
Yeah.
That's what I want to show people.
Yeah.
It's never easy. I don't think anybody's future is like, oh, this is a game. I'm good at this. Everything is work and also passion. You know, it drives you. It gets you further. But yeah, the podcast is exciting me because it's making me think about, here you are, you're a creator like me, but your path, your process, so different.
Right.
It's such a great story. I can't wait to share it. It'll be on the podcast
Okay.
mid-season. And the thing is, not all of my guests are people that have had problems.
Right.
They've just had interesting paths.
Mm-hmm.
I have one friend who was homeschooled and finished when he was 15 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And then just wrote a game company and said, I'm 15 and I graduated. And what I'm learning most from the podcast is that you just have to go do things. It really does not help you to sit on your sofa and think about it. It's really, is there a problem? What can I do to fix it?
Yeah. My last favorite question What advice do you have for young professionals, other than getting off the couch, who are just getting started in their careers?
I would say we get in our own way more than anything, and to stop listening to your brain. Start listen to another podcast. Listen to anything but your own self-doubt. I talk about confidence. How do you get confidence? Just start saying it. I really do believe that if you tend to your confidence, people will believe you.
Yeah.
I had no idea that walking with confidence was like going to carry me, but I just do. And every day when I leave the house, I'm like, that's right, you're Susan Gold.
Susan Gold, it has been a true pleasure having you as my guest. Thank you for sharing today.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Catherine.
To learn more about Susan's podcast and essays on Substack, see the links in our show notes. I'm so excited you're here. And remember, you're not alone on your career journey. Together, we can share our stories, move boldly into that perfect job, and we can light the path for our future fearless careerists. I'm Catherine Robert, and I can't wait to hear your story.
Fearless Careerist is available on Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube. Subscribe there or visit us at CatherineRobertEDD.com.